I'm going to move on to our open-ended questions so we can get to all of them. Now, multiple people had these situations. What is the best way to handle a recommendation on a tough decision that leadership ignores? Right? We talk about places where we make the recommendation, and leadership, whether it's emotional, personal, whatever, ignores, doesn't want to follow it. What's the right, and it's the right thing to do. What's the right recourse?
I'll
Greg.
go first.
Oh, Jason. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, and I think it was been said before, get data to support the recommendation, and data can trump feelings all day, especially if you're getting data from multiple sources, external, internal. Obviously, get your product data for analytics and usage and those kind of things. But then you need market data. You need some kind of bipartisan third parties to vet what your decision is. I did analyst relations for a while, so I would always talk to my analysts, whether it be Forrester, Gartner, IDC, others, and say, hey, we're planning on doing this. What do you think? And then, sometimes that provides a good weight to the leadership team, who a lot of times will respect what the analyst decisions are, because that ends up what kind of drives sometimes the market valuation of the company.
Actually, I had one time where I could justify my $25,000 Gartner Group budget for the supply chain services back in '97 for that exact reason. I could get Art Mesher to say,
exactly,
bad idea.
So you go to trusted advisors, bring that in, and include that with your data, and I think that you can get past a lot of those feelings that leadership has.
Yeah, Paul, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say I would definitely echo what Jason was saying, that it's all about data, and that's actually how I got my start in product management. At this company up in Boston, where I really kind of grew up in my career, is my first real job out of college. I was employee number 3 in the company. And with everything that goes with it, wearing every hat, doing whatever needs to get done, tech support, IT, training, everything. About 5 years or so into things, we had hit a plateau in sales, and we were not growing. Employee number 2 and myself, we really knew what was going on. We were not listening to our customers enough of what they needed, and we were listening to the founder too much. I actually did some skunk works where for probably took me 2 or 3 months, I called up about half of our customers, that was about 400 people at the time, to ask them what were the top things, top problems that we weren't solving for them or they wanted us to solve, top issues that they had in the software, basically just trying to build a top 10 of things that we needed to work on. Now, there were these 2 or 3 things that my boss had said, we're never going to do those. People in the budgeting and financial forecasting space, they don't need these features. Well, yeah, those features were on my top 10 list that I'd compiled talking to 400 customers. And I brought this data to my boss and I said, look, this is hard data that says we need to listen to our customers more. And we need a product manager to lead that charge of listening to the customer. So I made the pitch that we needed a product manager and for me to be the product manager, and he accepted both pitches. It really, over the years, I've sort of boiled that down to if it's my opinion versus my boss's opinion is going to win every single time. If it's my facts against my boss's opinion, my facts should win. And if they don't, it's time to look for a new job.
It's the old mug, your opinions, while interesting, are irrelevant, but also tied with if you're always getting trumped, even when you have the data, it's a culture issue with leadership, and you need to make a decision. Greg, you use data, you put the user metrics in to help make the decision on the one product. Talk to me about you're now a leader now, right? You've come up through it. And
one of the things that, with the opinion part is that I think that, presenting the data can be dry. And that is, you need to kind of put yourself a little bit into their position of like, try to say, what is their principles? How are they actually looking at the world? And then craft the data that kind of pulls that argument, because you can just pound data at someone and they'll like, okay, that's great, but they'll just poke holes in each one of it because their opinion has been formed. If you kind of craft it a bit to the data to, you know, supplement or understand where their potential arguments would be, what side they're on, then it goes much faster, much further along. Otherwise, it's just data that they can just poke holes and say, yeah, but what about this and what about that? And you didn't talk to the customers right. You didn't ask the questions correctly, or blah, 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 and goes on. And you just,
No, it's completely true. And part of it's also understanding how they make decisions, right? How they think in making sure you take that into consideration. I'd like to get Brian or Tom in on this. You guys have been quiet. We've got so many people this week. You know, we'll start with Tom. Your thoughts on the best way to handle recommendations on a tough decision that leadership ignores. Have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think the comment earlier about data, having the facts in line, it's harder for them to dispute that. You know, the experience that I had was to look at a product suite and evaluate it, see if I can get it going. But I mean, it was overwhelming that this thing was never going to make it. Once you lay out the facts, I mean, you can say for about 2 or 3 years, they had an escalation of commitment, actually even longer than that they just kept jumping into it. But once they saw you laid out the magnitude of what they were up against and you had all the facts lined up, they couldn't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
And they have to let their emotions go at that point and just cut it. But getting all those facts in line, that's the critical part.
No, I completely agree. Actually, I've been in a place where I had the facts in line and the leader didn't listen to them. I will tell you, don't do the kick the can down the road. I just basically put a pocket veto on it. And I didn't work on it. And then I got there'll be hell to pay call. But that goes back to Paul's comment on culture, right? If they're not going to listen to the data and the facts, is that where you want to be? Brian, do you have any thoughts on this before we move to the next one?
Yep. Yeah, I think the data is definitely important, but it's making sure you have the right data. You know, what are they looking for? You know, most executives are looking at the financials. So coming to them with usage data doesn't translate into money for them. So you have to put that story behind the data and what does that mean to them? So less usage, less money, and whatever they're focused on, not just the raw data.
I had a head of product into the financials. I had done all the analysis and I broke down what we could do and I did a pro forma on it. And the pro forma is like, no, we shouldn't make this investment. And my head of product said, well, but the president said this is what he wants to do. So make it so it looks like it. But you know, I stuck to my guns. Luckily the president became my mentor, not the head of product.